Hi there, I'm Speed at the bottom of the helix. Our next clinician, which you might have heard about 2 hours ago, since this is a new one, we'll introduce him again. He is a member of the Gateway Division of the NMRA out of St. Louis, Missouri. He has an HODCC freelance layout in his basement, a retired computer scientist in the areas of computer graphics and computer based training. He also has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering as well as a master's degree in computer science, married 47 years, father of twins, and grandfather of four. We welcome back to us here at NMRAX, Mr. Dave Ackmann.
Thank you, Speed. Glad to have the opportunity to do another clinic with NMRAX today. This clinic, we're going to be talking about how I made billboards, why I made them, how I found the artwork, made the decals, made support structures, and the tools that I found useful in making billboards. So we're going to be, in just a little bit, running a 41-minute video because I make fewer mistakes when I do these things in advance than when I do them in real time. And then we'll get together again for questions and answers about how I made billboards for my HO, Baden, Vote, and DeSmet. So if we could we roll the video?
Hello, I am Dave Ackmann, and I want to welcome you to this series of videos on the creation of billboards and posters for model railroads. My railroad is the Baden, Vote, and DeSmet, the names of the elementary schools I attended back in the 1950s. Like many railroads, I have a small carnival, but one day I decided the circus should come to town. I wanted circus billboards. I went looking for them on the web, but found nothing that met my needs. But I did find many circus images, just not billboards, so I decided to make them myself. One thing led to another, and I created over 100 billboards for various products and industries that I remember while growing up. Now my goal is to share with you the techniques I have uncovered to create unique billboards which complement the industries on your layout and the products they produce. To meet this goal, I will demonstrate how to search for, organize, and save vintage billboards and poster images, how to size and print decals for billboards you have saved, how to build supporting structures to display your decals, and how to build fixtures to help build the structures. In order to complete your billboards, you will need access to several items: a personal computer running Microsoft Windows and a high-speed internet connection, an inkjet printer. I use a Canon MG2520 available for about $75. Decal paper. I use white water slide decal transfer paper at about $18 per 20 sheets. A styrene chopper 3 from Northwest Short Lines, about $42 or its equivalent. Digital or dial calipers, a height gauge like a Wixie WR200 or equivalent, brass set-up gauge blocks, a ruler in HO scale, and various pieces of evergreen styrene. A plank of 48-inch 3/4-inch ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, pieces of brass rod, MDF, corian, or other dimensionally stable material, and 3x5 index cards. Throughout these tutorials, we will provide dimensions for creating billboards for images between 8 and 16 feet tall in HO scale. However, the techniques are applicable to larger and smaller scales. First, I decided to visit the Walthers website and search for ready-made billboards, and I found over 70 options in HO. But of these, over 50 were from Tichy, and I felt they were rather plain, and none featured a circus. Walthers themselves offered some pre-made support structures that matched the artwork appearing in their annual catalog, and although I did like them, there was little variety in the artwork, and there was no way to have billboards at any dimension other than the one they offered. I then searched YouTube and found one good site that showed how to construct custom billboards from styrene, and I liked his approach. You can find it yourself if you search for Luke Towan billboard. But finally, I decided that if I was to get my circus billboards, I would have to build them from scratch. But where could I find the circus billboard artwork that I remembered? As a retired computer scientist, I decided to do a search on the internet. I typically use Firefox as a browser and Yahoo for searches. I did a search on Vintage Images Circus, and I hit the mother lode. At the very top was a link to a site featuring circus images, so I clicked on it. I scrolled to the top and saw the first of many images, one of which was enlarged. The enlarged image was not particularly useful to me, but then I started paging downward. Quickly I found an image that met my needs, so I clicked on it. An enlargement appeared, which also gave the dimensions of the image in pixels. I decided to save the image to my hard drive. I right-clicked on the image and a menu popped up. One of the options was to save image as. I clicked on this option and a file save window opened. I decided to create a folder for all my future circus images, so I clicked on the New Folder button in the upper left, navigated to a place I liked, named the folder Circus, then double-clicked on it to open it. I then gave the image a name and clicked on Save. This completed the capture of the image on my hard drive to use as I desired. I continued scrolling down until I reached the end of the page, where a Show More Images button appeared. I clicked on it, and more images appeared. When I found something new I liked, I right-clicked on it and saved it. This continued until I had enough. I ended up with 35 images suitable for billboards or posters. I was very pleased. But this was just the beginning. I realized that I could combine vintage images with any broad topic for which I wanted a billboard. Cars, soft drinks, groceries, tobacco, anything that stirred my mind could be memorialized into a billboard. I subsequently searched vintage billboard instead of vintage images and found even more. The fun never ends. Before saving an image, I always take a look at the size of the image at the right side. I ask myself, how tall will the intended billboard be? If the image has less than 100 pixels of vertical size for each inch of intended height, then it might not have enough resolution to avoid a choppy or pixelated image, and I should consider a different one to avoid disappointment. In other words, if an image has less than 200 pixels of height, it may be considered for a short wall poster, but not a billboard. I did discover that some of the images were copyrighted, but I believe that if used on my personal railroad for educational purposes, then the fair use doctrine of copyright law allows me to use them. Also, as the use is very limited, I believe the de minimis doctrine, in which the law does not concern itself with trifles, applies. I certainly would not sell any images I captured, but I believe that I am free to use them on my model train layout. If you have further concern, of course, consult your own counsel. Other images have watermarks imposed on them to protect them from unpaid use, and I tend to avoid them. Here you can see watermarks on a circus image and what it can look like if you have the skills to edit a photo. It's a lot of work. Some other thoughts. You know I encourage the use of folders to hold similar images. If you would like some free software to print all the images in a folder, complete with their file names, I would recommend Image Viewer from http://www.faststone.org. It has a nice way of putting multiple images on a single page in a thumbnail format and is quite useful. Also, while I used Firefox and Yahoo, other browsers and search engines will also work. I tested Microsoft Edge and the Google search engine, and they worked as well. Your choice. Now that we have captured images, how do we turn them into decals or printouts for our billboards? That is the subject of our next video, making decals. Making decals is easy if you have a good inkjet printer. All you need is special decal paper and some software to scale the images. First, the paper. Decal paper is available at some hobby shops and online. I prefer to buy my decal paper from Amazon, as it is less expensive, less than $1 per A4 size sheet, and is delivered directly to my door. Search Amazon for Water Slide Decal Transfer Paper White, and it should pop right up. I like the brand from Rollurius. Their sample image is the one with the purple background. Rollurius also makes a clear decal transfer paper, but get the one with the white background. That's why we put white in our search bar. Clear transfer paper might be our choice for numbering rolling stock, but not for posters and billboards. If you have PowerPoint on your PC, you can use it to import, size, and print your images. If not, consider downloading LibreOffice at www.libreoffice.org. LibreOffice includes a useful presentation program similar to PowerPoint. Click the download button to download the software and save the MSI file. Then double-click on the downloaded file and follow the installation instructions. Whether you use PowerPoint or LibreOffice, the tasks we need to make the images printer-ready are the same: importing and sizing. I will show how to use both tools. But before we start with the software, allow me to make an observation. In my research, I discovered that there are no industry-wide standards for the size of billboards, although they tended to be between 8 and 14 feet tall. We can make them as tall, short, or wide as we want. But unless we standardize for our railroad, we will spend a lot of time cutting and sizing customized parts. Therefore, I decided that for my railroad, I would limit my billboards to 8, 10, 12, 14, or 16 feet tall. I also decided to always maintain the image's aspect ratio, the ratio of the height to the width that I found in the original images I downloaded. That is to say, if the original artwork's height was 200 pixels and the width was 600 pixels, an aspect ratio of 1:3, and I decided to make a sign that was 8 scale feet tall, that would mean that the width would have to be 24 scale feet. No scaling in just one dimension would be allowed. And since 8 scale feet translates into 96 inches, and the scale of HO is 87.1 to 1, that means that the actual height of an 8 by 24 foot sign must be 1.10 inches and the width 3.30 inches. Similarly, the height of 10 foot, 12, 14, and 16 foot signs must be 1.38 inches, 1.65, 1.93, and 2.20 inches. That's just for the artwork. All my signs also have a 10 scale inch frame on each side, so the actual size of the styrene sheet on which the artwork is mounted will be 0.28 inches wider and taller than the artwork itself. After adding in the frame size, the height of any 8 by 24 foot sign would be 1.38 inches and the width would be 3.30 inches, plus 0.28 inches, or 3.58 inches in total when including the frame. All these numbers are contained in a spreadsheet available at the website of the Gateway Division of the National Model Railroad Association. I strongly suggest that you pick a set of sizes for your billboards and not create custom sizes for each sign. Now, on to importing and scaling with PowerPoint. Our goal is to download and size about a dozen images on a single page. We do so because decal paper is not inexpensive, so we might as well get as much out of a sheet as we can. To import our accumulated images, we open a new blank presentation, then click on the border around the Click to Add title box, and then click on the keyboard's Delete key to remove it. Similarly, we click on the Click to Add subtitle box's border and then hit the Delete key to remove it. Now, to import an image, we click on the Insert tab and then on the picture icon. A menu window opens and we scroll to select the folder where we placed our images. We then select an image of interest and then the Insert button. The image will appear within PowerPoint. To resize the image, we right-click on the image and then select Size and Position. Next, we make sure that the Lock Aspect Ratio box is checked. We enter in the desired height. I hope that you do remember that an 8-foot tall billboard translates into 1.10 scale inches and so forth. And then click on the Close button. We repeat this process to add more images until our page is full. If you do not have PowerPoint, LibreOffice, as described earlier, can do the same task for free. Start LibreOffice and click on the Impress Presentation button on the left. The Select a Template window will open, and since we do not want a template, we cancel the window. Now, on the right side, in the Properties column, please make sure that the slide format is A4, which is the size of the decal film, and select the first available layout, the blank one in the upper left of the available layouts. To insert our images, we click on the Insert menu item and then on Image. Just like in PowerPoint, a menu window opens and we scroll to select the folder where we placed our images. We then select an image of interest and then click on the Open button, a slight difference from PowerPoint where this button is labeled Insert. Now, right-click on the image and select Position and Size. We make sure that the Keep Ratio box is checked, enter in the desired height, and then the OK button. We repeat this process to add more images until our page is full. Printing the decal is easy. Just place your decal paper properly in your printer and do a File, Print. When the page completes printing, be careful to avoid touching the printed area and allow the ink to dry overnight. Not 1 hour, not 2 hours, not 4 hours, overnight. Once the page is dry, remember that inkjet printers use water-soluble ink, and if we tried to use the decals without water protection, we would not be pleased. To correct the issue, go to your automotive paint store and buy a rattle can of clear spray lacquer and coat the image. My decal paper says to coat the images within 24 hours of printing. But be sure to read and follow the manufacturer's directions, both for the decal paper and the lacquer. I generally give the decals a second coat of lacquer and allow 24 hours for final drying. If you feel uncomfortable making decals, it is perfectly acceptable to print on cardstock paper, which is about as thick as an index card, and apply the card to the support structure with rubber cement. It may not be as bright or glossy, but it can work. Now that we have our images ready to apply, how do we build the structures to turn them into billboards? That is the subject of our next video, building structures. Making the support structure for billboards involves building 3 assemblies: the face and frame, the legs, and the boardwalk. Making the decals was pretty easy, but this part is a bit harder, so be patient. Let's start with the face and frame. To make a face frame, cut out the decal you wish to use. Also, cut 2 pieces of evergreen 8210 about 4 inches long. Lay the decal on a cutting surface with the 2 pieces of 8210 on the top. This is the height of the face frame you need to hold both the decal and the frame. Lay a straight edge on the top and scribe a straight line, or half a dozen lines, across a piece of evergreen 9040 and snap it off. Similarly, place the 2 pieces of evergreen 8210 on the side of the decal. This marks the length of evergreen 9040 needed to contain the decal and the frame. Using a straight edge, scribe a line and snap it off. You could use evergreen 9030 and even 9020, which are progressively thinner and less expensive, but I appreciate the additional heft and am willing to pay the price. Your decision. Now it is time to build the frame, and we will use a chopper razor blade type cutter or equivalent and some more evergreen number 8210 strips to cut out our parts. Since we just cut the face, I recommend that we place the top of the face frame in the chopper and bring up a stop to set the size of the cut. I cut pieces of brass to serve as stops for right angle cuts, as they are smaller than the triangular stops from Northwest Shortline and easier to use. Cut 2 pieces to become the top and bottom of the frame, and 3 more to be used eventually for the boardwalk. While you are at it, cut 4 pieces of evergreen 8206 for eventual use as back stiffeners. Similarly, rotate the face and cut 2 pieces of 8210 to frame the left and right sides. Set aside 3 pieces of 8210 and all 4 pieces of 8206. Now, miter the remaining 4 pieces of 8210 at 45 degrees, being careful not to snip off too much of the length. Glue the left frame piece to the face, then the top and bottom, and finally the right frame piece. Test fit the decal into the frame and trim if needed. I usually use Plastruct plastic weld or Plastruct Bondene glue, but other fast-drying, brush-applied glues will work. Plastic weld has a bit more working time and totally cures in 24 hours, and Bondene sets up faster and cures faster. You don't need to be ultra careful with the gluing, as painting will cover a lot of sins. Now, flip the face frame assembly face down and let's glue some stiffeners to the back for visual interest. In the previous step, we cut 4 pieces of evergreen 8206, but something larger or smaller could be substituted. I space them evenly, parallel to the long side of the frame. Now let's go to the boardwalk. Earlier we cut 3 pieces of evergreen 8210 for this purpose. I use a small fixture to line the 3 pieces parallel, apply some masking tape over all 3 of them, and then use the tape to remove the strips from the fixture. About every inch or so, I glue some evergreen 8104 crosswise to brace the main pieces. I then remove the tape and allow the assembly to dry. Once dry, I nip off any excess length of the cross braces. Finally, we need to create several supports to hold the frame and boardwalk. Our supports will have 4 parts: a vertical leg, a slanted leg, a cross member, and a diagonal support, all constructed from Evergreen 164. Here you may want to diverge from my suggestions. Evergreen 164 is approximately 8 by 8 inches in HO scale, and you may feel that such a piece is a bit larger than prototypical. The billboard frames from Walthers are indeed a bit thinner. But for my eye and fat fingers, 164 is more pleasing and easier to work with. Again, your decision. If you end up wanting to make a lot of signs, you may want to order Evergreen 164 in bulk as part number 6164 directly from the manufacturer at http://evergreenscalemodels.com. They're good folks. To assemble the supports, I created a leg assembly fixture out of ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, or UHMW for short. UHMW is a very slippery plastic and little sticks to it well, thus making it ideal for an assembly fixture since our glue or glued parts won't stick easily. Yes, you could make an assembly fixture from some other material, but UHMW is ideal, easily obtainable, and well worth it. I will describe how to make this fixture in the final part of this tutorial, but for now, note that I will be using one fixture to glue the vertical and slanted legs at a 30-degree angle, and will then glue the legs to the cross members at a 90-degree angle to the vertical leg, rendering it a horizontal support for the boardwalk. Finally, I will glue the diagonal supports at 60 degrees. Why 30 and 60 degrees? Because I can cut these angles easily on the chopper and they look good. Walthers uses these angles for their billboards, so if it is good enough for them, it is good enough for me. So now it is time to cut the legs. But how long? This depends on the height of your face frame and how tall you wish the billboard to be above the ground. In an earlier tutorial, I suggested that a small set of standard billboard heights be used, and stated that an 8-foot HO scale billboard would translate into 1.10 inches of height. I also recommended a frame around the decal, adding an additional 0.28 inches of height to the final face frame. Now, if we wanted to make the billboard appear 8 feet above the ground, we would have to add the height of the face frame, 1.38 inches, to the height of the legs below the face frame, another 1.10 inches, for a total of 2.48 inches. Additionally, I like to add another scale foot, or 0.14 inches actual, to create an open toe gap area between the face frame and the boardwalk, for a total height of 19 scale feet, or 2.62 inches. But that's just me. If you want taller or shorter legs, make your decisions and cut some suitable length styrene for the vertical legs. How many? I tend to take the length of the face assembly, round it up to the next higher whole number, and cut that many leg sets. Thus, if the face frame assembly is between 3 and 4 inches, I use 4 leg sets. If it's between 2 and 3, I use 3 sets. But how long should the diagonal leg be? And you thought you would never use your high school trigonometry. The ratio of the adjacent side to the hypotenuse of a 30-degree angle of a 30-60-90 triangle is the cosine of 30 degrees, or 0.866. Thus, the diagonal for the support will be the length of the vertical leg divided by 0.866, or 3.02 inches. If you decide to make your legs shorter or longer, alter them accordingly. The spreadsheet also contains values for the length of the cross member, the diagonal support, and how far the cross member should be from the top or the bottom of the alignment fixture. Now that we know how long the leg should be, we can cut some styrene, right? Not so fast. If you think you might ever want to create another billboard to these dimensions, stop and make a gauge block. What is a gauge block? It is a piece of dimensionally stable material such as brass, UHMW, or corian, cut to the exact length of the desired part. The gauge block is then used to set the distance of a chopper's blade to its stop block. You never again have to try to measure the distance to place the stop block from the blade. You just place the gauge block on the chopper, slide the stop block over, and forget about it. So, rough cut a piece of material. I use 3mm square brass rod, a bit over length, and gently file or sand off the end until it is the proper length. Make a gauge block for both the vertical leg, the sloped leg, the cross member, and the diagonal support. If you plan on making more billboards than just one size, make a set of gauge blocks for each size. Yes, it's work. Just do it. You can thank me later. Now, using the gauge block, cut the vertical leg to size. Using the sloped gauge block, cut a sloped leg to about 1/4 inch over size, miter one end, and then cut the other end to size with a 90-degree cut. The sloped end will not be perfectly flat to the ground, and that never bothered me, but if it bothers you, chop off the angle with your hobby knife. The result will be a perfectly vertical billboard, which after final assembly may be a bit unstable on your layout. You may want to nip off 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch from the sloped leg to make it more stable. Initially, I wanted a vertical board, but more recently have gone for something more stable. Be advised. Now let's glue the two legs together. I first place a dab of glue on the mitered edge of the sloped piece and place it in the fixture. Then I place a dab of glue on the end of the vertical piece and place it into the fixture, such that the top of each piece meet at the top of the fixture. The slots in the fixture are about 1/100 of an inch wider than the styrene, so I carefully wedge my hobby knife blade between the outside edge of the legs and the fixture, so that the legs have a good close fit, and I wait 15 to 20 seconds for the joint to set. I then put the point of my hobby knife under the joint and pop it out of the fixture and set it aside to cure, which takes about 2 to 24 hours. Don't rush the cure time. While waiting for the two legs to cure, cut the cross member. The length of the cross member will be a function of the height of the face frame assembly. The taller the sign, the longer the cross member. I'll spare you the trigonometry, but my fixtures require that the cross member be 1.42, 1.62, 1.75, 1.93, and 2.06 inches respectively for 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16-foot high billboards. These lengths are not critical, so feel free to cut these a bit longer if you like. Using a gauge block to set the length, cut some evergreen 1/64 styrene about 1/4 inch longer than recommended, miter a 60-degree angle, and cut it to the recommended length. Similarly, use your gauge block to set up the cut for the diagonal cross brace, 0.86 inches, 1.10, 1.25, 1.42, and 1.62 inches. Cut oversize, cut a 60-degree angle, square off the end to the proper length. No approximations here. Now that the two legs have cured, place the cross member in the fixture, making sure that the angled end is facing properly in the proper slot of the fixture. For an 8-foot face frame, use the shortest slot. For a 16-foot face frame, use the longest slot. You will notice that the cross member slots are deeper than the leg slots. This is so that after placing the cross member in the fixture, you can apply a dab of glue where the cross member intersects the legs, then reinsert the legs into the fixture and press the pieces together, and the fixture will hold all three pieces in place. Wait 15 to 20 seconds for the pieces to bond, and then use a hobby knife to pry the pieces from the fixture. Wait a few hours for these pieces to cure. Before gluing the diagonal support, Note that the square cut end of the diagonal brace will attach to the sloped leg and the mitered end to the vertical leg, so rotate the diagonal support until they fit. The diagonal support is in the same plane as the two legs, so don't try to glue it to the cross member. It might help to put the three-piece assembly on a piece of glass, legs on the flat surface and cross member above, then slide the glued ends of the diagonal support in place. Now, rough cut, miter, and final cut the diagonal support and glue it into place. Wait overnight for the assembly to cure. Once the new day dawns, make sure the area where the sloped leg meets the cross member and the diagonal support is flat. If not, take a file or sandpaper and flatten it. Now it is time to attach the legs to the face frame. Don't try to attach the legs to the frame assembly without first placing a piece of ultra-high molecular weight or even wood on your tabletop, so that the cross member, the thing that will eventually hold the boardwalk, has some place to drape while gluing the legs. I like to place the legs about an inch apart. Take your time with them, but faster setting glue like Plastruct Bonding might make it easier than longer setting glue. Do your best to keep the legs perpendicular to the frame assembly. Short, inch-wide pieces of UHMW between the legs will make this easier. The legs will start to set in 15 to 60 seconds, but if you can, give the joint 15 minutes or so before gluing the next leg to give the joint some brief time to set up. Alternately, and while not absolutely essential, I made an assembly fixture to assist in this task, and it helped a lot. Before gluing the boardwalk, place the face frame into the large slot of the fixture, face down. Line it up so the legs are equally spaced across the long side of the face frame, and that the top of the face frame is aligned with the top of the leg assembly. Take a leg assembly and glue the top part with plastic weld. Insert the cross member into the hole between the two pieces of the fixture and press the top part of the leg into the sign and the bottom part into the long slot. Hold for 20 seconds and go on to the next leg set. Once all the legs are attached, cut a piece of evergreen 144, wide enough to span all the legs, and glue it to the sloped legs at the intersection of all the joints to serve as a brace for all the legs. Once dry, trim off the excess. Set the assembly on its legs and glue the boardwalk to the cross member. If desired, trim the legs to make a shorter sign. A straight edge might be useful to minimize the sign's wobble. Paint the entire structure. Since glue does not adhere well to a painted surface, make sure all parts are firmly attached before painting. I prefer flat colors over glossy, and I often try to make the colors of the structure complementary to the colors in the decal. Spray paints worked for me, and I always give 2 coats to both the front and back. Apply the decal. My experience is that about 20 seconds in the water is all it takes to loosen the decal from the backing paper. Once dry, and if desired, spray the whole thing with dull coat. Place the sign on your layout and enjoy. Throughout the last section on making support structures, we made extensive use of assembly fixtures. But where did they come from? The short answer is, I made them. Today we don't have time to cover just how that is done, but there is another resource. I have a website at http://daackm.github.io, and toward the bottom of the site there is a section which contains pointers to all the videos we have seen today, plus a 16-minute section on how I made the fixtures. I have an extensive wood shop in my basement with tools like a table saw and router table with a router lift, and these tools were necessary to make the fixtures. If you don't have such large bench tools, perhaps a makerspace in your area does, or maybe someone in your train club who is also into woodworking could help you in their shop. But always remember that such tools are dangerous and your safety is your responsibility. If you lack experience or training, ask for help. The material I used in the fixtures is ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene, or UHMW for short, because it is so slippery and glue doesn't stick to my fixtures during assembly. UHMW is available from woodworking stores such as Rockler and Woodcraft, and even plastic supply merchants in large cities, but I prefer to buy mine from Peachtree Supply at http://www.ptreeusa.com. Why? Because their UHMW pieces seem to have finer grain and are easier to machine. I use 3/32 and 1/8 inch carbide router bits to machine the material, but even smaller bits would be required if you want billboards for something smaller than HO. A digital height gauge and brass setup blocks are also almost indispensable. In a nutshell, the leg alignment fixture is a piece of 4-inch by 3/4 inch UHMW, 4 1/4 inches long, on which I located the center and cut a 60-degree angle. I routed 3/32 inch slots along the two longer sides. I very carefully cut off the top point and routed slots perpendicular to the middle length side. The slots were at different locations to be used for different sized signs. The fixture for the boardwalk can be made from just about any thickness of UHMW, 1 3/8 by 6 inches. I routed slots 0.15 of an inch apart and extremely shallow, using a 1/8 inch bit. The final assembly fixture is made from a piece of 5 1/2 inch UHMW cut lengthwise, 1 3/8 inch from the long side. The larger piece is thinned down from 3/4 inch to 0.59 inches using a large router bit, leaving short wings at either end. The smaller piece has 3/32 inch slots cut in the short side and again on the long side, with the long side slots being offset 3/32 inch from the short sides. The pieces are then glued together with contact cement. There are more details to constructing the fixtures in its video. So there you have it. If you have any questions after the presentation, I can be reached at ackmanns@charter.net, and don't forget the website. Now let's open things up for questions.
Questions were to the presenter. His name is also
Okay.
Dave.
Okay, Speed, that was a great video, Dave. You got any questions there from the chat, Speed?
Yes, we got 3 questions. Dave, can you tell us why white decal paper instead of clear?
Well, white decal paper is on a white background. The actual decal film is white. So you can, most of the signs that I see have a colored background, but if it does have a white background, it will be white. So that's why I prefer it. If you get the clear background, think of if you were trying to number a freight car. You would want it to be clear so that the background color of the car would pass through onto the decal. But if you wanted to have a white background, use white decal paper. And then the film itself is white. And it works out fine.
So you save a layer of white paint.
Say again, please.
You save a layer of white paint because you have white.
You have white paper, white decal film. When you take it off of the backer, it will be white in the areas where you've put nothing else.
Correct. Where do you buy the water slide white decal paper?
Well, there's lots of places for that. You may find it in a local hobby store if it's very well stocked. You may find it from Micromark, where you can get an NMRA discount. You can find it, I buy mine through Amazon because I have Amazon Prime and it can be shipped to me for free, so I can buy it without putting together a larger purchase. So it's fairly common. As I said in the video, I use something from Rolurius and it worked well for me. I had less success with other brands, so I am fairly loyal to that. If you find something that works for you, use it.
Is the billboard supposed to be perpendicular to the ground?
I made it that way to begin with, but then when I put the boardwalks on it, it tended to tilt just a little bit forward if I did not glue it to the layout. So I started nipping off maybe 1/8 of an inch so that it would lean back just a little bit. But I didn't want to get carried away with that either. So in many cases, I ended up gluing them to the layout with tacky glue, and that seemed to work a little bit better. But if you tried to put an individual, a figure, on the boardwalk, it might be a little bit unstable unless it was cemented to the layout.
Okay. Does it really need the diagonal since you already have the supports?
The diagonal is cosmetic, but since I was working with 30, 60, 90 triangles, it was pretty easy to cut it and to put it in, and I think it looks more prototypical. Do you need it for the support? No, you do not. But it was not that much trouble to put in there. And really on that one, the dimensions are a little bit more forgiving than they are for the other pieces. So I put them in there because I like the way it looks.
And this was all built in for an HO scale layout, correct?
It was built for HO. The Evergreen 164, which is the foundation for all the legs, is actually about 3/32 of an inch. It's about an 8x8. It's a little big for HO, just a tad, but and if you would buy them commercially from Walthers, their legs are indeed a little bit smaller, but they were harder for me to work with. And I'm working on a router table when I make the fixtures for assembly. So the smaller the things get, the harder they are to work on. So I like the way it looked with the Evergreen 164.
Any chance you'd be willing to sell some of these fixtures?
I have not in the past. I wanted to give on my website, which DAACKM.GITHUB.io, DAACKM.github.io. The videos are in there that and the ones that I created, the fixtures, they are more substantial than what you have seen here today. In the interest of time, I've decided to make the cut there. So you saw about 4 minutes of how I make these fixtures, but my chapter 5 at the bottom of that website, scroll all the way down to the end, and there'll be a handout there and a link to a more extensive video on how to make these things. Yeah, I have an extensive shop, but there's got to be somebody in your train club that has a router table with a router lift and might be willing to make some. I suppose I could make some for sale.
Thank
but I'd
you.
rather you learn how to learn yourself. But it is inherently dangerous. Woodworking is inherently dangerous. And the first time I taught this clinic, 10 days before I taught it, I cut my thumb on a bandsaw. And I ended up, you can't see the scar from here, so I won't raise it up. But it healed well with a little bit of CA glue. But be very careful with these things. Always wear eye protection. If you don't know how to use a bandsaw, if you don't know how to use a router table, get some help with it. And indeed, when I routed the cross member slots in there, I made a custom push block so that it would go across, and I just felt safer with that. So watch your safety on all these things. And they don't come with the black coloring in the slots. I had to do that with cut off electrical tape.
Someone wasn't sure if they missed it, but can you make these from wood in the same way?
I wouldn't do it. Ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, one of my favorite words, UHMW, is inherently slippery. So when I used Bondine or Plastra plastic weld to glue my members together, the slatted leg, the straight leg, and all that, the stuff doesn't stick to UHMW. And I let it cure for 20 seconds and I pop it up. And as long as I made a pretty good glue joint to begin with, it comes out really well. So yeah, you could do it, but you can get UHMW at any of the woodworking stores, Rockler. You can get it at Woodcraft, and you can certainly get it at Peachtree, which is my favorite, PTREEUSA.com, PeachtreeUSA.com. And if you're in a larger U.S. city in the late fall and winter, early spring, there are traveling wood shows that go through major cities. There's one that goes through St. Louis, and I can get a slab of UHMW 3/4 inch for $22, 3/4 by 4 by 48 inches, and they come in smaller thicknesses as well. So that's worth looking around for that. I really like UHMW more than building a jig out of wood.
You think we could 3D print a jig?
You might be able to, but I don't know about the slipperiness.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be the problem with that as far as unknown for me.
Well, Dave, that brings us to another great clinic. Thank you very much for your time and all the effort that you put into this.
Well, thank you for hosting me. I hope it was worthwhile to everyone who attended, and stay safe.
Thank you very much.